Family. This lesson is called The Last Trump, the 44th President of the United States, and the last king or man of Mystery Babylon. There's a copyright disclaimer that allows me to use certain works for educational purposes. It's fair use, nonprofit. And this warning is for persons, agencies, attorneys that may file false or frivolous complaints. They may be subject to digital millennium. Copyright complaints may be subject to civil liabilities for false and frivolous lawsuits. Again, this is fair use. Now, topics includes the last trump, how this relates to the numbers 11, 44, and 444, and how this ultimately represents the final end of the bankrupt American Republic. It is important to understand the nature and purpose of this kingdom, which we are in now, Mystery Babylon, what she is, and why I believe she's called Mystery Babylon, and about her kings, or men who served as her ruling presidents, to understand why her nation, which is the people and the land, are being judged, and how it relates to the final end of America and of all the West that's led by America, while the kingdoms of the East will rise. Why do I say that the last Trump, or President Trump being the last president of the United States, and why he is the 44th president? I will make my case as to why I believe this is true and how it's going to relate to the fulfillment of the following: Genesis chapter 15, Obadiah, Revelations chapter 18. But before I can say more, I have to first identify who are these so-called Americans and why this name isn't written as such in the Holy Bible. Now, this video here, I'm going to break it up into two parts to give you the complete understanding. And right now I'm just going to do part one, so you can stay tuned for part two. The number is 11. The meaning of number 11. The meaning of the number 11 is important in that it can symbolizes disorder, chaos, and judgment. Coming after 10, 11 represents, coming after 10, which represents law and responsibility. 11, however, represents the opposite, which is irresponsibility, law breaking, and which can bring disorder and judgment. In Genesis chapter 11, men rebelled against God, against Yahuwah Most High, and built the Tower of Babel, and he judged them by confusing their language, resulting in worldwide chaos. Whereas, in contrast, the number 12 is one of the foundations of scriptures. The meaning of 12 is that it symbolizes Yahuwah's power and authority, as well as serving as the perfect governmental foundation. It also symbolizes completeness and the whole house of Israel as a nation, for there are 12 tribes of that nation. In the movie Leave the World Behind, they gave you subtle clues as to what's going to happen in America, which I've explained in a different video. But to come back to this video for a moment, from a radiation issue that this boy was having, a lot of his teeth fell out. But in this particular case, he pulled out 2 teeth at the same time while he was looking at it. And it shows that he pulled out, a 1 and a 1, 11, the way it is symbolized in this particular snapshot. Before the World Trade Centers were destroyed, that number represented the number 11. Those buildings represented the number 11. Notice how they're standing together like a number 11. And it's not coincidence that in September, the 11th, 2001, was when those buildings were destroyed from a terroristic attack. Now, we all know, those of us that are in America, we know what 9/11 represents, or 9/11. There's something there, okay? Let's move on. So, in that, again, the movie Leave the World Behind, it showed when it was mass chaos, when all the satellites and the TVs went out during that, the EPM the EMP blast. This they made it a point to show that particular number. You can see that's a 101, but if you negate the 0, it's just 11. And I'm coming to a point as to why I'm mentioning this 11. The 11 dukes of Edom, the true enemies of Jacob. Number 11 and Edom. There were 11 dukes of Edom. Edom was another name for Esau, who is Jacob's brother in the Bible. And he had a bitter hatred existed between the two. The dukes or chiefs of Edom were listed there from Tema all the way to Aram in Genesis chapter 36, verse 40 through 43. And these are 11 dukes. Now, the word duke right here, you see here, keep this in mind. There's a specific people that use this as a title of nobility. Okay? The 11 dukes of Edom in Genesis chapter 27, verse 37, verse 40. And Isaac answered and said unto Esau, Behold, I have made him, Jacob, thy Lord, and all his brethren have I given to him for servants, and with corn and wine have I sustained him. For what shall I do now unto thee, my son? And Esau said unto his father, Hast thou but one blessing, my father? Bless me, even me also, O my father. And Esau lifted up his voice and wept. And Isaac his father answered and said unto him, Behold, thy dwelling shall be the fatness of the earth, and of the dew of heaven from above. And by thy sword shalt thou live, and shalt serve thy brother. And it shall come to pass that when thou shalt have the dominion, that thou shalt break his yoke from off thy neck. So what did this particular chapters, what do they mean in representing today? Jacob, Israel, will inherit the earth. Edom, the remnants of Edom, will serve Jacob. Esau wept and asked his father, bless him with something, anything. Esau begged Isaac for a blessing in a weeping voice with a defeated spirit, because he sold his blessings. He didn't appreciate the precious gift of the birthright of the firstborn. He rejected it. He sold it to his brother Jacob, and Yahuwah our father saw that. Jacob said unto Esau, You will have the fatness, richness, and the precious things, and live a blessed, wealthy lifestyle, but only for a time, but only by thy sword. Which means for him to get the blessing, he can't just earn it or been given it to it like Jacob was. He has to start wars and win wars. He has to kill, steal, and destroy, and take land and possessions, and take people's property, and even enslave people. So, but only by thy sword shalt thou live in your blessings, the fatness of the earth, or the material possessions. But you will serve Jacob at first, his descendants. Then you will have your dominion. When you break his control over you, he will be weak and vulnerable when his blessings turn into curses, which points back to Genesis. This will point back to Deuteronomy chapter 28, because of the curses and blessings. When Jacob and his descendants, when they kept being cursed, and they kept transgressing against God's laws, that opened them up to be subject to the curses. And when that happens, Esau and his descendancy was able to come through and take over the world through transgressions. And we'll get into that a little bit more as to when that actually started. Esau in particular. Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. And Yahuwah said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. And the one people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. The 11 dukes of Edom, a tree recognized by its fruits. So how can we identify Edom today? The dukes of Edom knew the scriptures and knew that the prophecies of Genesis 25 about his end. So Edom went into hiding. He went into many other nations. We now know that according to scriptures, Edom went out and mixed his seed with the Ishmaelites and many other Gentile nations, But one group of people in particular that is not talked about much, or I haven't heard people talk about much, or isn't discussed much in the Truth Ministries, is that Edom has mixed his seed among the Canaanites, whereby his seed was spoiled. Now keep that in mind. When the seed was spoiled, it makes a distinction between. That's when there was a genetic distinction being made between Jacob and Esau's descendants. While they look different, behave different, and have characteristics that wasn't natural for that person. So how can we identify Edom today? They are descendants of Esau. Edom, or Edomites, have many, if not all, of his biblical personality traits and characteristics. 1. The tough man. He used to spending long periods in time in harsh conditions, short-sightedness, focus on the here and now, believing that tomorrow, judgment or just recompense will never come to him, nor his children, but his reign will fatally end. Controlled by instincts. They're inhibited only by their wild, animal-like appetites and instincts. Despises Yahuwah's plan. They despise Yahuwah's love for his people, their purpose on earth, their earthly inheritance, and the loving plans of Yahuwah have for his chosen people. He may be considered a skillful hunter, but tend to be of a physical vigor, outdoorsy, impulsive, careless, and sensuous. In this regard, you're talking about in the physical sense. You love the physical things. He loves hunting and catching things and using weapons, and sometimes even on a more violent, destructive nature. Now let's go to the 11 sons of Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be. Now let's make note of this, that the 11 sons of Canaan is listed here: Sidon, Heth, Jebusite, Amorite, Girgasite, Hivite, Archite, Sinite, Arvakite, Zemarite, and Hamathite. Canaan was the fourth son of Ham. So a lot of people mistake that Ham, they believe that Ham or Hamites are the cursed seed from Noah. That's not true. Ham wasn't cursed. Cush wasn't cursed. Mitzrayim wasn't cursed. Put wasn't cursed. It was the fourth son of Ham that was cursed. So this is where we get the first four from. He's the fourth son of Ham. And then he had children. He had 11 sons. And his fourth son is Amorite. It's right there. So keep that in mind. Genesis chapter 9, verse 25, 26, and 27. And he said, Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren, which means all of the people of the earth, from the house of Shem, the house of Japheth, and the house of Ham, the tenth of Ham, sorry. And he said, Blessed be the Lord of Shem, Yahuwah, and Canaan shall be his servant. Yahuwah shall enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan shall be his servant. Notice that. So, cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants. So, to understand what's happening here, Japheth's tent will serve Shem. Ham's tent will serve Shem. However, the subset of Ham, which is Canaan, these people will serve not only Ham, but they will also serve Japheth and Shem. The number 11 again in plain sight. This is another aerial view of the Twin Towers, what they call it, what they used to call it anyway. It represented number 11. Of all places, they put this in New York City, where it's the financial capital of the world, of Mystery Babylon, a.k.a. America, which took over the financial capital of the world from London. The 11 sons of Canaan. What were the sins of the Canaanites? Because we know that throughout scriptures, God, Yahuwah keeps saying to wipe out the Amorites or wipe out the Canaanites. So we want to address that. Canaanite culture was described as utterly corrupt, especially when it came to idolatry, violence, and were very abusive to the most vulnerable groups in their communities. They are described as practicing in destructive sexual behaviors, injustices, and harmful rituals in worship, along with body mutilation. They were very active in child sacrifices to their Canaanite gods, Moloch and Baal. They passing their children through the fire, basically killing their children in fire, especially their first born male child for mammon and social elevation among the other Canaanites. Today, this practice is called family planning or reproductive rights, aka abortion. So you see where I'm going with this, right, people? Right, family? The Old Testament presents the Israelites as an instrument of divine justice. These are not depicted as battles for plunder or power grabs. Rather, the Israelites' conquest of Canaan was an act of divine punishment on an extremely corrupt society, which Israel was commanded by the Most High Yahuwah to wipe them out, including all of their children and all of their cattle, because Yahuwah, the Most High Yah, has commanded it, and because Israel's failure, we suffer in affliction to this very day. So Matthew chapter 7, verse 16, verse 18, and verse 20, ye shall know them by their fruits. A good tree cannot bring forth evil fruits, neither can a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. Wherefore, by their fruits ye shall know them. So where are the Canaanites today? How can we identify the Canaanites today based on their characteristics? And before I continue on, I'm not advocating that every single Canaanite individual is an evil person or fitted for destruction. That's not where I'm going with this. We're just talking about generalities. We're talking about the systems of control of government and how things are being orchestrated and ran today by way of the Dukes of Edom. Okay, they're actually being used. And to continue on, I want to focus my concentration of effort on this lesson with respect to the Amorites. Okay, not to exclude the others, but it's primarily the Amorites I'm talking about. Now let's begin. Their characteristics of fruits. They worship money. They place money above almost everything. People, relationships, treaties, agreements, the lives and healths of others or even themselves, the souls of men, their own health and interests, and of the earth herself. Child sacrifices, passing children through the fire of Molech, abortion, killing children for mammon and blessings, or they kill their children so that they can advance in the career, or they about to go into college. You know, the same old diatribe they use as to reason why they need to go ahead and kill their unborn child, so that they can be promoted in this world. They're cruel and evil. They don't regard the young nor the old. They have an old habit and long history of preying on the weak, the poor, the vulnerable, the young and the old alike, and especially those who are not of their kin. They worship power. Not only do they idolize money, but they idolize and worship those with power, or those with money and power. Number 5, sexual perversions, loving on animals, free love, quote unquote, sexual promotions in social, educational, and other inappropriate settings. They're very violent. Wars are used to eliminate populations for mere profit, for land grabs, for political dominance, for human sacrifices to their other Canaanite or Amorite gods. Guilty to many, but they hold themselves not guilty. They can kill a man in the street and hold themselves not guilty. You know, it's so many things that I can get into that, but that's not the point of this particular conversation. They have no honor. They do not honor their own word. They don't honor their own laws. They don't honor their own agreements, their treaties, or their contracts with others when it's inconvenient for them. It is these same people that claim manifest destiny, but will charge others for murder, theft, and trespass. Then they renege on 40 acres and a mule. We ain't forgetting that. Lastly, lawlessness. They don't honor nor recognize international laws, but use the color of law they call rules-based international order, which is basically a bunch of mumbo jumbo, but which benefits primarily the West to the detriment of the East and to the global South. According to this view, the rule-based international order may be seen as the United States of America's alternative to actual international law, an order that encapsulates international law as interpreted by the United States, accordingly with its national interests, a hybrid, meaning whatever the American-led West wants it to mean at any given time as long as it benefits America at the time. Who are these Canaanites today based on their fruits? The Canaanites today are none other than the Anglo-Saxons. The 11 sons of Canaan were mixed with the 11 sons or dukes of Edom. You'll note that duke is a title of Anglo-Saxon nobility, where in some cases raised to kings and queens of many European nations, even unto today. As stated before, Edom is hiding in other nations, but most notably for this conversation, the Ashkenazi, the Kittim, which is Rome, Tarshish, Tubal, and Togarmah, Ishmael, which is the Arabs, the Ishmaelites, but mostly in number and in percentages, they are probably mixed with the sons of Canaan. So we can see, because I mentioned before that they're primarily concentrated in the Amorites, we can see that the Amorites, which is the Canaan's fourth son, were chosen to quote-unquote oversee the slavery, affliction, the detention of Judah, who is the fourth son of Jacob. It is also noteworthy that Canaan was the fourth son of Ham. From here we get 44 and 444, which we will discuss later in this lesson. Edom is indeed ruling over the whole earth, but he hides behind a banner of white supremacy, or white man face, or not white man face. I didn't mean to say that. He hides behind the banner of white supremacy. He hides behind white people. So you can't see who he is for who he really is. So that's the true enemy. It's the Edom, the Dukes of Edom, who are hiding, and they're hiding in this group of people, this large aggregate number of people called white people, and they use white supremacy as a primary weapon. And it's within the West in particular. Since Edom now appears white, he rules over all the nations by way of the sword. The Americans led Western powers in all of its forms. Cursed be Canaan, his descendants. A servant of servants shall he be. So what does a servant of servants mean? They would not only serve the nation of kings and priests, but they also shall serve other servants. They will become slaves in these last days. Slaves they will be. The Bible says that they will serve in not only the tents of Shem and the tents of Japheth, but they will also serve the other houses of Ham. As these people will not have a home of their own, nor will they be left to themselves in their own land as before. No, never again. Revelation 13 verse 10. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Now, before I continue, we got some questions here. How do I know that America is Mystery Babylon? Well, based on Genesis chapter 15, based on Revelations chapter 18, Obadiah, the book of Obadiah, and many others, I'll have to say that America fits the description of Mystery Babylon. And why do I say Mystery Babylon and not just Babylon in general? I'm going to get into that. So we understand that Esau, when he was walking in the day, during the days of King Nimrod, when he was the king over the earth at the time, the known world, the first Babylonian king, or what's referred to as Babylon, he killed Esau. Blessings came from the edge of the sword. He killed Nimrod, and then that's where he began. That was the seed, I should say, the seedlings that started his reign over the earth. but he can't undo prophecy. So Babylon, I'm making a distinction between Babylon as a whole versus mystery Babylon, and why Babylon is a mystery, because the people that's ruling it don't look like the rulers of Babylon. They don't behave like the rulers of Babylon. They're not from the genealogy that's rooted from, let's say, from Nimrod or what's the other one? I can't think of it. The name skips right now. But there are other Hamite gods that was from the seeds of Ham, other than the Canaanites who the ruled over the world, the known worlds. So you got the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, Egypt. All those places were ruled by a specific group of people that was either at one time in conflict with Israel. In this particular case, you have Edom hidden and absconded in this safety and in this bubble called white supremacy and white people. So because of that, he acts like a mystery, so you don't really know who's actually in charge. And that's going to lead to my second video about who are these people that's ruling everything. So America is mystery Babylon, but what is the mystery of this Babylon? It's going to be revealed in the next video. Who is really in control of things behind the scenes? Again, that's going to come from the next video, but I can say that, to put it mildly, it is not all of the Anglo-Saxon. It is the specific Anglo-Saxons that's tied in with the Dukes of Edom, and they made this blood covenant death cult allegiance to Satan. So if you look at it as a satanic death cult of the Anglo-Saxon leadership, we can refer to those people as the syndicate. So who is really in control of things behind the scenes? It is the syndicate, and we will get into that. Am I saying that all Anglo-Saxons are evil and therefore irredeemably doomed? No, of course not. We all have ability to repent of our individual sins, but this message refers to the judgment as a nation. But individually, as a household, as a family, that's between you and the Most High. If you are rooted in Hamashiach Yahusha, if you are friends of the Israelites, the true biblical Israelites, then there's a place for you in this world after Edom's world ends. So it's not every specific individual. It's just the people that are actually committing the evil, and those are not covered by Hamashiach's blood, whose blood was shed for the remission of all sins. Okay, so what did this mean to me, and how should I proceed with this knowledge? Again, so we have to take stock in understanding this. In the large grand scheme of things, this determines how you have to maneuver in these last days. If you are an Israelite by blood, you have to follow, of course, the Holy Spirit. You have to be led of the Holy Spirit, and you have to fall under the blood of the Lamb and be secure. And you have to be forgiving, not just yourself, but to your brother. And unfortunately, or fortunately, however you want to look at it, Edom is your brother. Whether he's hidden in white supremacy or not, you have to forgive him. Forgiveness is key to be forgiven by the Most High. And then that we need to pray every day that we are counted worthy to escape all that shall plague the earth. We should pray daily that we escape all that shall plague Mystery Babylon in the days of her calamity, and pray for guidance and be led of the Holy Spirit. He will guide you into all truth. So right here is just another graphic that shows that the Amorites is the fourth son of Canaan. Where are the Canaanites today? So I pulled this up off of Google, and this little snippet. They say that the Amorite is a member of the ancient Semitic-speaking people who dominated the history of Mesopotamia, Syria, and Palestine. And if you go down here, it says the Amorites were equated with the West. So this is not my words. This is what they have up here on Google. Though their true place of origin was most likely Arabia and not Syria. They are coming for the 11s. We'll cover Ezekiel chapter 5, Revelations 13, Deuteronomy chapter 30. Who are the they, and why are they coming after the 11 dukes, the 11 sons of Canaan? 11 dukes of Edom, 11 sons of Canaan. There is a war going on right now that isn't being talked about much. A civil war of sorts within the Edomite kingdom, the Edomite-led Western powers, along with their allies, and against them. Okay, so to understand what's going on here, I talked about that there were 11 sons of Canaan, 11 sons of Edom, or the dukes of Edom. They merged and formed this alliance. They genetically bred into them. Their seed was spoiled by the Canaanites. But the syndicate, which is the leadership of the Anglo-Saxon death cult, they are making alliances or breaking alliances based upon what's getting ready to happen. So on one side, you have the America First, or should I say the New World Order. And then on the other side, you have what was referred to as the New Babylon, or the One World Government, or the globalists. So these two ideas clash. So you can't have one and the other in the same same operating environment. One has to override the other. And the way America is set up, with all their guns and all of their rights and all this other stuff that they put on paper, not necessarily enforced, but it's on paper and it's presented like these are rights, that completely clashes with the system that is trying to rise. So if you take the Amorite out of the picture, put them over here in America, you're left with 10. So you got the 10 nations, or the 10 Western powers. They're and their allies, and they're deciding whose sides they want to be on. They want to be with America, or do they want to be with the 10? So that's what the whole world war is going on about. It's really, like I said, it's really a civil war. It's brother against brother, nation against nation, but brother against brother, and they're deciding who's on whose side, who's on fifth, that sort of thing. But anyway, going on to this thing here is, you see this white lion is the name of the slave ship. And there's this little symbol right here. Just keep this in mind. In the days of Nimrod, which I think I mentioned before, king of the known world at the time, aka the first or golden part of Babylon, Esau, the father of Edom, the father of the Edomites, I should say, murdered Nimrod. And by Isaac's consolation prize or gift to Esau, the blessings, was the early start in his rule over his dwelling over the fatness of the earth, when he killed Nimrod. As the West power fell, the two eastern kingdoms will rise. First, the nation of Hebrew Israelites will be born in one single day, while its misery Babylon will fall in 1 hour. And then the final Babylonian kingdom will rise, aka the beast system, which will also be formed in the absence of the American-led West. Edom wanted to maintain his control over the earth, but he was standing in the way of the Antichrist, who will rise to power after the fall of America. He will not have any control over the Israelite kingdom, however. Let's make that clear. So he will have control over the whole earth, the Western nations, the Eastern nations, the global South, and what have you, but he will have no say in the kingdom of the Israelites. I want to make that perfectly clear. So the they in this context are the nations who were foretold to betray Mystery Babylon, America, for all her sins, both what they did to the world in general, but most particularly what they have done to us, his chosen people, because Yahuwah had put it in their hearts to fulfill his wrath and judgment against her. Now notice these symbols here. You got early Arabic, you got Phoenician, and you got early Greek. There's a K, there's a backwards K, and then there's this calf symbol. This calf symbol is which is seen shows that it is the 11th letter in the early. It's the early. It's the 11th letter in the early alphabet, Arabic alphabet, or early Arabic and Phoenician letter system. I shouldn't say alphabet. That's really Greek. Um, but yeah, so it's the 11th letter. So that's indicating something here. See the pattern, 11. And also note that in the early Greek, the letter K phonetically pronounced as a hard C, as in cannon. Okay. Now, so that same symbol, which is right here, early Arabic, is seen here in that white lion. The movie Leave the World Behind, the white lion is the name of the slave ship that brought the first of the Hebrew slaves onto the shores of this new land now known as America. The 11th Arabic symbol was used since the Arabs are well known for their slave trading in the early part of the African Atlantic slave trade. So now they're coming full circle. They're coming after these people, the 11, or the ones that line themselves up with the America First. The ones who line themselves up with, or those that are sealed in judgment with America. That's what this symbolizes right here. Let's be clear on that. It's not for everyone who lives in America. It's those that are judged in America because of what America has done on Mystery Babylon. Then again, that's the number 11, plain sight. Number 11 in plain sight. Ezekiel 5, verse 12. A third part of thee shall die with the pestilence and with the famine, and shall be consumed in the midst of thee. And a third part shall fall by the sword round about thee. And I will scatter a third part into all the winds, and I will draw out a sword after them. The scripture says that Mystery Babylon, her inhabitants, 1/3 will die by hunger and disease, 1/3 will die by war, World War III, Civil War, and 1/3 will remain, and 1/3 that remain will go into captivity into all nations. Now, this is full circle because you have to understand, since 70 A.D., when Judah fled, when Rome Kittim with Esau destroyed the wall, and ransacked and stole all of the goodly pleasures and all of the wealth out of the temples and out of the houses of Judeans back then in 70 A.D. That's exactly what happened to our people. 1/3 died by hunger and disease because of homelessness, because of the city was destroyed, and just living out in the wilderness and so forth without food or medical services. Back then you needed to have a city type structure to sustain oneself, or you got to have your own food. And if you're out running from the battle or whatever, you're prone to die from hunger and or disease. When you get injured, there's nothing to heal you. You're constantly running. The same thing is going to happen to the Mystery Babylon today, of her people. 1/3 will die by the sword, by war. So they're gonna be those that say, well, we gotta fight and we're gonna stop China or stop Iran or stop whoever that God sends in this particular case. They're going to say, well, we're going to fight. This is our land and we're going to fight. Or they're going to fight amongst themselves. So 1/3 of them will die by war. And the last remaining will go into captivity, fulfilling what happened to us, for we went into captivity. The 1/3 of us that survived, we went into captivity. And now our captivity is ending. Their captivity is getting ready to begin. Their judgment is beginning. Again, repeating Revelations 13, he that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that leadeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 7. And Yahuwah thy Elohim will put all these curses upon thy enemies, and on them that hate thee, which persecute thee. The enemies of Judah and the enemies of Israel will receive all the curses that was on the whole house of Israel. All of the curses that's listed in Deuteronomy chapter 28. A series of curses, including hardship in the city and in the country, barrenness, and various afflictions, ultimately leading to exile and destruction. And a series of curses, including national defeat. Your enemies will triumph over you, scattering your children into all nations for servants. Health plagues, the diseases of Egypt, and other physical afflictions. Physical and personal afflictions, boils, tumors, scabs, itching, wasting disease, fever, inflammation, madness, blindness, confusion of the mind, severe boils on knees and legs that cannot be healed, plagues that cling to you until you are destroyed, serving your enemies in hunger and in thirst, and in need and want, being uprooted from your land and being given to another people. These are all the curses that our people had to suffer over this past 404 years. And now it's going to happen to your people. Number 44 and 44:4. When you count the number of kings who ruled over the unified kingdom of Israel and the number of kings that divided the divided southern kingdom and the divided northern kingdoms, were a total of 44 kings. When you count the number of actual men who have held the office as president of the United States, there's a total of 44 men. Trump was that 44th person to hold the office. Now, people's going to try to say that, oh, he's 47 or 45 or whatever the case may be. But when you consider that there were, besides Trump, there was another president, I believe his name was Grover Cleveland, when he held office for 4 years, then he lost the re-election, and 4 years went by under a different president, and then after that he was re-elected. So they added those numbers up as if they were different men. But when you add up the numbers, and if you don't believe me, you can go look this up. It's readily available on the internet. You count the number from George Washington to Trump. He is number 44. Now, Biden could be said that he's truly the 45th president, but the reason why I'm saying 44 is significant and the last president, because let's be honest, we know that he wasn't, even though that Biden was 45th president, he was in office, he wasn't running anything. Let's just be clear on that. Let's just be honest. So Trump was the 44th and the last person to hold the office of president. And this is why I believe that this is the last presidency. He even said it himself that if he could, he would run again as the third president. And he told the Christians that even though he's not a Christian, he said he loved the Christians to vote for him during his last election cycle, and you wouldn't have to worry about voting ever again. So that should tell you something right there. This number is significant with respect to the end of Mystery Babylon. Also, as a side note, I think I brought this up before. When there was a rap video that said, "Kick in the door, waving the 4-4." So the 4-4 is a destructive number in that context. And we believe that this is what's happening now. Trump, Donald J. Trump, his forte, in my humble opinion, my belief, and based on what I research, he is very good at taking companies through bankruptcy proceedings, and from bankruptcy proceedings, going through receivership on some of them, and just closing business concerns on others. Now, this goes into the idea that Mystery Babylon, when it talks about the Mystery Babylon is fallen. Notice how that verse in Revelation 18 mentions it twice. So you have Mystery Babylon, or America, is falling internally, is falling externally. Mystery Babylon is falling economically. Mystery Babylon is failing. That name escapes me. Globally, with respect to their military and their prominence. So all these things are happening, what seems to be simultaneously. It's like there's a left and then there's a right. The right is failing, the left is failing. The left is failing, the right is failing. There is no right answer. Whatever answer they choose, let's move forward in this direction, it was the wrong one. But let's move forward in that direction, that was the wrong one. So this is part of that curse that we were mentioning before is being applied. So Mystery Babylon is indeed falling. It's falling because it is already done. We're just seeing the slow deconstruction. Think about like how a body, a decomposing cell that you leave on the petri dish, it slowly decomposes like a lettuce leaf or something. It don't, like when you cut it off the root, at that moment that's the death mark. But then it slowly decomposes over time. This is what you're seeing happening. But because Mystery Babylon is the way it is, there's a lot of components that it deals with on the international stage and on the economic stage, on the financial stage, and the morality stage, on the every aspect of what makes a country great in the eyes of the Gentiles. You're seeing they're slowly contracting. You're seeing it internally, you're seeing it externally. The messages being brought forth to the people is not reading, it's not tracking to the people, the citizens. It's not benefiting the citizens. And their actions that they're doing overseas is not benefiting their allies. In fact, it's actually benefiting their enemies, to be honest with you. It's not benefiting their allies. And everything is backfiring on them. So again, number 44 means the death of something. In this context, I'm not saying the number 44 means death. I'm saying in the context of that rap video that I mentioned, kick in the door, wave in the 4-4, talking about a gun. In this context, President Trump fits that bill. He's actually deconstructing America from the inside and from outside. Additionally, when you get the number, we get this number when you take the fourth son of Ham and the fourth son of Canaan, which is the Amorite. So you have Canaan and then Amorite. That's 4-4. And we know that the Amorites were chosen to oversee the prison detail of the Judeans that fled Jerusalem back in 70 AD. And they're still operating as prison guards to this very day. But guess what? What happens when the prison is closed and all of the captives are released? They're given a bill of freedom. The governor gives them a letter and said that you're free to go. What happens to all the prison guards? They are terminated. They're fired. This is what you're seeing happening in America today. They're being let go. Okay, so in the frequency concept, like in the music industry, the standard tuning for the A above middle C, or A4, is currently at 440 hertz. Because the normal for musical performances after an international conference in 1939, although the American music industry reached an informal standard of 440 hertz back in 1926, as America became dominant in all forms of media and became the standard for the whole world, music, films, radio, TV, commercials, publications, and so forth, use this frequency, a form of mass hypnotic sorcery, in the entertainment industry, in the educational industry worldwide. All other nations modeled themselves after this frequency because everyone wanted to be like Mike. Everyone wanted to be like America. It was changed from the more natural frequency of 432 or 435 hertz, a healing frequency that actually helps the listener to feel more grounded and less stressed, and they changed it to 440. But why did they change it for 440? Because America said, we're going to go with this 440. So the reason why I have this in red is because this is an incomplete note. You got 440 hertz, but there's something missing here. What's missing here? Considering that Judah is inarguably the face of the voice of music and sports performance within the modern day entertainment industry, remember Judah is the fourth son of Jacob, Israel. And it is not a hidden mystery that many, if not all of these Hollywood entertainers, music entertainers, or sports superstars often either sold out their people for their 30 pieces of silver, wealth and fame, aka the Judas option, or they contractually sold their own souls for fame and wealth, aka the Esau option. This is very unfortunate but very true. This is not referred to only Israelites who do this that make it big in the quote unquote entertainment industry, but this other nation as well. But let's be clear about this. You know, this would be a very bland country if you didn't have Judah on the face of its entertainment industry. So when you add the four, which represents in this case the soul or the very souls that they sell themselves for money and fame, that makes it 444, which makes the magic work for them in a very short season. So this is why, with respect to how they use their sorcery, whether it's their money or their social media, their entertainment, their sports stars, their music legends, their TV and movie producers, all this stuff is based upon the 440 and the 444. This is why their magic works. But remember, Yahuwah said that in these last days that he would make it so that their witchcraft and sorceries will no longer work. So part of deconstructing that to stop them from using that magic on you is to understand what they're doing and how they're doing it. So now you understand why this has to happen, which is very, very bad, for them to make it big, or for this to happen, which, like I said, is the Judas option. Okay, let's continue on with that. So now we at the number 444. It can be said, now, it can be said that it can be said that Yahushua's earthly ministry lasted 44 months and 4 days. I'm basing it on what I've researched online. So, based on what I've researched, that actually came out to now. Remember, the calendar system were different, but how I base up the numbers, it comes out to 44 months and 4 days. Okay, so please excuse me if this is incorrect, but for the purpose of this example, I'm putting this here. The next one is Ezekiel chapter 1. 5 and 6. Also out of the midst thereof came the likeness of four living creatures, and there was their appearance. They had the likeness of a man, and everyone had 4 faces, and everyone had 4 wings. So again, you get 444. 4 living creatures, each had 4 faces, and each had 4 wings. And the Hebrew gematria, which is the science of numbers, for the word Damascus is 444. The name of the city that appears in the Holy Bible 60 times. Damascus is the capital of the modern day Syria. It is the oldest continuously inhabited place on earth that we know of. And according to Amos chapter 1 and Jeremiah chapter 29, that we know that Syria, with respect to the prophecy, what's going to happen, not Syria, but Damascus, what's going to happen in Damascus, we know that we're in these end times. That there's a prophecy that has not yet been fulfilled, but will be fulfilled. So we will definitely know that we're in the last days. Now going on from there, Persia, Medes, or the Iranians. Iran seized the U.S. embassy in Tehran on November 4th, 1979, which they held 52 American hostages for 444 days, a period that significantly impacted the U.S.-Iran relations and domestic policies. From then on, Iran and the U.S. have always been at odds. And Isaiah 13 describes the destruction of Mystery Babylon. Yahuwah will stir up the Medes. She will become completely desolate, and all who flee her will be hunted and killed. The Medes will do this, according to Isaiah 13. Okay, now it's interesting to note that of all the negotiations, the people that were sent over there, the American embassy, to free those people, it didn't bear fruit. It wasn't until a black man, i.e., a Judah from the tribe of Judah, he went over there and he was able to free After 444 days, he was able to free them. Jesse Jackson was his name. Is his name. He went over there and he freed those hostages, whereas none of the other quote unquote non-Israelite negotiator was able to do that. I find that interesting. Okay, so the end of the world of Esau. We know that in Second Esdras, we know that the end of the Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of the world that precedes it. We know that this world that's coming up, this war that's coming up, will be a civil war / world war, but the theater, this war theater, will be based on the U.S. shores. It will be an American war. And after the destruction of Mystery Babylon, the rest of the West and all those allies will be in complete shock and awe, and they will be in a state of confusion and chaos. And they will be looking for this new leader to rise. And that's when the man of sin will reveal himself, because he will solve their problems. So that will be the end of the world under human control, and it will be the start of the world being controlled by a non-human. Let's just call him alien or whatever you want to call him. He's not 100% human. It's going to be something else. The beast system is going to rise over in one section, and then over here by ourselves, we would be with the kingdom of Judah or the kingdom of Israel by ourselves. We'd be left alone. Now, lastly, before I end the talk, is how did all this come about? Specifically, how did they take over control and run everything, and how were they able to strategically hide themselves, all the stolen wealth, all of the stuff that they took from us, from Solomon's temple and the destructed temple, the deconstructed temple, all the stuff that was there when Rome laid siege to Jerusalem back in 70 AD. And how did they rise? How did they become numero uno when it comes to finance and kings and queens and rulership over the earth? How did that all come about? We will discuss that, but I would say that the rise and fall of these people, remember I call them the syndicate, they use this thing called the corporation, and I will discuss that in part 2 of my video. Final conclusions. Number 44, Trump is president number 44. It was 44 kings in Israel, and in a unified Israel, divided southern northern kingdoms. I mentioned that 44 refers to a death of something, and Trump, his expertise, in my opinion, is dealing with bankruptcies or taking companies into bankruptcies. Now, this corporation that I just mentioned is going into receivership or is in receivership. They're deconstructing and running down operations. They're running down the school systems. They're running down the educational system and the medical, all these things that they were once benefited the people who ran the corporation that all operated as the privileged class or that operated as prison guards. These things are running down. And you're seeing all this money and all of the brain power is actually leaving. The leadership, the wisdom, the wealth, it's all leaving this corporation known as America today. So that's the significance of 44. We know that Edom is hiding in 11 sons of Canaan and 11 sons of Edom, which are the dukes. And that's why, say, the Duchess is a female equivalent of duke. That's why all the princes and kings and princesses of Europe, Western Europe, predominantly from German and the UK, they're the Duchess of this and the Duke of that, because that's who they are. They married themselves to hide themselves from looking more like us to more looking like the Canaanites, and that's why their seed was spoiled, and that's why they don't look like us now, and that's why there's a huge mystery as to who they are, who America is, why America isn't in the Bible. It's a whole bunch of mystery. That's why it's called Mystery Babylon. All right? And finally, in the next lesson, we're going to cover specifically the Queen of England, or before she died, who was she, who she represented, the corporations. I'm going to break down the corporation they use, where they get their money from, where it came from, how it's going, where it went, and how they're going to be paying them reparations back with interest. And the people who are hitting themselves, known as the syndicate, who are the true rulers of Mystery Babylon, and all those that are behind the Western nations. And now you start to understand as to why that there's a huge divide between, say, one faction of white people versus another faction of white people. Why there's a separation between Eastern and Western Europe. Why there's a separation between Russia and China versus the West. You know, if they didn't speak and you just took one Russian person, stood them next to a person from Eastern Europe or Western Europe or America, and you just line them up like in a lineup, you would think they're all white people. You wouldn't, unless they opened their mouth and started to speak, or you notice the dress. If they all were dressed alike, you couldn't tell who they were. But we know that there's a difference in terms of covenant, in terms of bloodlines, in terms of judgments that's coming upon the blood of their fathers, that's the sins of their fathers. There's a distinction. So everyone will be judged according to his or her own sin with respect to individual, but when it comes to the nations, it is based upon sins of the father. And we know that there's judgment coming. So there's a distinct difference between, say, a Russian and a Ukrainian. There's a huge difference between a Russian and an American. Or there's a slight difference between a person from the UK and someone from America, because their two countries are, you know, they're very, very close genetically speaking, and their curses are almost the same. But the Amorites or the Canaanites, that are the Hivites that run over there in Hollywood, and all those Faustian devil packs, and they make it over there, and they interbreed and they mix themselves up with all kinds of, you know, the other groups of people. And the Ashkenazim, they're there and there too. But again, we're talking about land masses. So the land masses of America is referred to as the land of the Amorites. And I want to bring bring that point home, because when you read Revelations, when you read Genesis chapter 15, after the judgment of this nation that he talks about, he says, but then the iniquities of the Amorite is not yet full. So we saw that 400 years came and went, and now we're just watching all the moves that these people are making. We're watching this thing in live, like straight out of the Bible. It's like word for word. We're reading what's happening today, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening next week. You could actually say it's like line by line, precept upon precept. We can see this thing happening. Anyway, I need to wrap this up. It's over an hour, and I would like to bring my final conclusions to an end. And stay tuned for the next video, which will tie these things together. Because from the lessons of today, Mystery Babylon, I was giving you a broad overview as the aggregate people. But this I'm going to be more specific. Resident Evil, the Syndicate, and the Corporation. All right? I want to thank y'all for your time. Thank you for listening to my video. And I just want to say shalom. If you like my video and like to support my ministry, my truth ministry, please feel free, if you're led of the Spirit, to support me. My Cash App, Ilya Yehuda, on Cash App. And shalom. Thank you.